major retirement village. Appreciate you guys coming out here. Obviously our major focus, and I think when you strip away all the noise of this election, is it's all coming down to the economy and who is best placed to run the economy. We are seeing a government that has created high inflation, high interest rates. We are now the only country in the Asia-Pacific region in a recession, and with that comes the risk of rising unemployment. So these are serious times for New Zealand, and they need serious economic management, and I think that's what the National Party can deliver in government after October the 14th. Obviously tomorrow becomes an important day as we look at the state of the books as they get opened up before the election, but what's obvious to us is that New Zealand has some major challenges, partly due to, largely all due to the economic mismanagement of this government over the last 6 years. With that, happy to take any questions.
Are you worried that these books tomorrow,
yes.
I mean, if they're much worse than you're expecting, what will that mean for what you've been promising New Zealanders?
Well, the great thing is we've built a tax plan so that it's fully funded and independent of a fiscal plan. We'll have a look at the books tomorrow, and as Nicola and I have talked about, we will then put together our fiscal plan off the latest set of numbers that we see tomorrow.
Do you have to backtrack on things?
No, not at all. Not at all. The reason we developed a tax plan independently of a fiscal plan was to make sure it was fully funded by actually having reprioritisation of government spending and also make sure that we introduce new revenue streams to support that. So that can stand alone, independent of the fiscal situation.
How bad do you expect the books to be?
Well, it's difficult to know. We'll find out for sure tomorrow. But what we know for sure is that New Zealand has now had high levels of government spending, taxation and debt. New Zealand has now had high levels of inflation that stayed high and for longer. We've had high levels of interest rates that have stayed high for longer. We are the only country in the Asia-Pacific region in a recession, and with that obviously comes the risk of rising unemployment. We have now the biggest current account deficit New Zealand's ever had since the mid-70s, and probably the largest in the OECD region. These are really serious issues. We look across the ditch at Australia. We see a government that actually has delivered fiscal surpluses, doesn't have a current account deficit, and most importantly is growing strongly.
Can you explain how your tax cut plan won't be inflationary?
Well, it's very obvious. We've actually made it fully funded, so we're taking wasteful spending and reprioritised spending, and we're actually giving it back to New Zealanders, and New Zealanders will choose.
Spend it, right?
Correct, but if you look at the Treasury advice, the fact that that is a much more efficient, better way of delivering than getting government spend money. We're stopping wasteful government spending. We're actually giving it back to New Zealanders, and New Zealanders will choose to either spend it, but many of them, given how tough it is to find $700 extra a fortnight for their mortgage, will choose to put into their mortgage or to save it as well, which is not inflationary.
So you're giving an includes new money, though, or supposedly
correct.
Includes new money. So that's new money into the economy.
It's a fully funded tax plan. It stands alone, and it's less inflationary and doesn't drive inflation. No inflation impact.
But it is new money coming into the economy, yes?
It is a new revenue raise, and it is also being offset with a reprioritisation of government spending. It's fully funded. Given that money being spent by this government as it has done, it has had an 80% increase in government spending. That has spiked asset prices, spiked domestic inflation, led to high interest rates, put the country into recession. That is the reality of what's happened.
So are you giving an ironclad guarantee that no matter what happens tomorrow, you won't have to backtrack on any promises?
Absolutely. Yep.
Will we borrow at all in any of your plans?
I'll let Nicola talk to we're going to talk more about our fiscal plan after we see the state of the books tomorrow.
The really important thing about our tax plan is it does not require a single dollar of borrowing. By contrast, Labor have already presented a tax plan which, by their own admission, will require funding from future operating allowances. That is extra government spending in future budgets, highly likely that they will have to borrow for that.
Do you think Māori people are New Zealand's indigenous people?
Absolutely.
Winston Peters does not.
Well, he's wrong. They are.
Will you rule out working with him?
As I've said to you, I'm not worried about Winston Peters. He's not in Parliament. He's below the thresholds. I'm focused on building a National Party vote. That's what it's about.
What line does he have to cross before you?
Sorry?
What line does he have to cross before you would rule him out?
I'm just not talking or thinking about him. I'm focused on the National Party and making sure I maximise the National Party vote, and that's what it's about. We've had 38 policies. We're focused on delivering for New Zealanders. As the leader of the National Party, that's what I'm doing.
But to what extent do you need to condemn someone who's going down that path by just ruling them out?
Well, I just have told you very clearly, I think Māori are Indigenous to New Zealand. That's pretty simple for me.
But you're leaving them with a pathway to power.
Sorry?
You could be leaving him with a pathway.
I'm focused on maximising the net. I've been very clear from the beginning. If you want to guarantee the change of government, there's only one thing for you to do, and it's to party vote national. I've been building out a policy plan. We've had 38 policies. We've had 8 big commitments through our pledge card that we actually want to give clarity as to where we're going as a government. That's what we're focused on. That's what New Zealanders want us to deliver, and that's what we're going to do.
Yesterday you wouldn't rule out working with an anti-vax party, and now leaders have said this and you won't rule out working with him. Why not?
He's not in government. He's not above the thresholds. I'm not talking about Winston Peters. I'm focused on the New Zealand people. I'm talking about the New Zealand people and making sure I deliver solutions for them that actually improve their lives. We have a major set of economic challenges in New Zealand. That's what everyone should be focused on right now. How have we got here? Because of economic mismanagement on a scale we've never seen before in New Zealand. And that's what people should be talking about. And it's important about how we solve it, because this is serious stuff. When half of New Zealanders out there are worried about their money on a daily basis, when 430,000 of them are behind on their debt payments, that's what I care about. I'm worried about Kiwis losing their homes. I'm worried about the 30% of Kiwis about to refix their mortgages between now and Christmas, have to find $700 a fortnight. I'm worried about Kiwis not feeling safe in their homes. I'm worried about kids not getting good education in New Zealand. That's what I'm focused on, and that's what we should be discussing this election campaign.
Speaking generally, do you think that there is an obligation on politicians to articulate potential working agreements with other parties before an election occurs?
Well, I'm focused, as I said, as leader of the National Party, I'm doing my job, which is to build the case for why I'm saying to New Zealanders, we are in serious times. It's a defining moment in our history. This election will really matter and shape the course for generations to come. The only way to guarantee change is to party vote national. I do not want anybody working or voting for any other party. I want them voting for the National Party. It's that simple.
But speaking generally, this is your beliefs on how, on what the public deserves before an election. So, in your view, do you think that it is beholden upon politicians to talk about that, talk about their working relationships, who or who they won't work with before an election?
What I think is important as leader of a national party, I talk about the National Party. I do everything I can through an election campaign to make my policies, my plans, my ideas really clear to the New Zealand people. And then the New Zealand people will deliver us an outcome on election night. And under successive governments, we've had to make that work.
David Seymour is saying that he might only support you with confidence, not with supply. What do you make of that?
Look, I just don't think that's going to be a reality at all. David Seymour and I have a good personal relationship. We're going to have a very constructive relationship in government. We have good alignment on how to get this, we want to get this economy moving. We want to see better outcomes in law and order. We want to see better outcomes in education. The means by which we may do that might differ, but we will be very constructive, positive as we work our way through those issues.
Have you spoken to him about, since he's been making these comments about?
I caught up with him briefly yesterday. David and I catch up regularly from time to time. I haven't had a chance to talk about this specifically.
So when you say that you don't think he's going to do it, do you think David Seymour's bluffing?
Well, what I'm saying to you is that David Seymour and I have a good relationship. We've known each other for a long time. We were neighbours for 4 years. Our personal relationship is good. We will be working constructively through the issues and the policies, and I think we'll have a very constructive working relationship.
So
I've got every confidence in that, as you've seen in previous National Act governments as well.
Do you think it's a bluff?
All I'm just saying to you is I just think we're going to have a very constructive, positive relationship with that.
How destabilising would a minority government be?
Again, I'm not talking about that because it's not a. It's speculation. It's a hypothetical and it's speculation. What I'm saying to you is we have a good personal relationship and we have a very constructive relationship with government. Sorry?
We know we're going to see.
You'll see that shortly, but we need to see we need to see pre-fu first. And so when the government delivers pre-fu, we'll take our time, we'll digest it and understand it. We are serious people trying to deal with a serious economic challenge, and it's important that we take our time and we give it considered view and we think deeply about it. That's why we took so much time around our tax plan. It was considered, it was thoughtful, it was intelligent, it was smart.
This week,
But the pre-fu comes out tomorrow, and we'll take our time, we'll digest it, and we'll come up with a fiscal.
Craig, it's really important to me as our finance spokesperson that in putting together our fiscal plan, I fully review the pre-election fiscal update to properly understand the true state of the country's finances, that I then put our plan together in light of that I check it once, that I check it twice, and that we get our final fiscal plan externally reviewed. So I think this is something where we should do it once, do it properly, and I agree with you, the New Zealand people need to see that plan in full before they cast their votes, and I can assure them they will.
So will that be in a couple of weeks?
We will take our time to go through the steps that I have outlined, which is to fully understand the pre-election fiscal update, to then put our numbers together based on that, to check it once, to check it twice.
Before advance voting starts?
Absolutely, I can give that guarantee.
And will that detail the cuts we're going to make to public service?
We have made clear that we will be preserving frontline services. We have committed that in each budget that we set, we will be increasing funding for health and education. We have already outlined in our tax plan our approach for reducing some of the spending happening in the backroom bureaucracy. And in that policy, we've made clear that we will be asking chief executives to say to us where they think they can find around 6.5% in reductions in their backroom costs, but in such a way that they preserve frontline services.
New Zealanders won't know in your fiscal plan exactly where you are planning to make the cuts.
New Zealanders will see in our fiscal plan clearly where we will be funding, and they will see increases to funding for frontline services.
So in your fiscal plan,
I reject
line
them.
by line, will you be showing where you're making those cuts?
We have gone line by line through government agencies. We've identified 24 where we think there is room for reduction in their backroom bureaucracy. We have put together a plan that asks those departments, which overall have had a 62% increase in backroom funding, to find a 6.5% reduction. We've detailed that in our tax plan that is available for all New Zealanders to review.
We couldn't get an answer yesterday about NEMA. What's your plan for NEMA?
I see NEMA as an essential frontline service provider, so any reductions that they would make would have to be to backroom costs that are not essential to emergency management. Now, can they be reducing the amount they're spending on farewell parties, on reporting functions, on office refurbishments? That's a question for their chief executive. What I want them to be doing is focusing their dollars on emergency management.
You mentioned that you want the funding to go up. How much by?
Well, I want to have a look at it in government. What I've been really clear is I've talked to a number of the hospices across New Zealand, so with Shane Retty. We know that there are some challenges there. We want to understand that more, and we want to do what we can and look to do what we can to improve palliative care in New Zealand.
So have you made that commitment not knowing how much?
No, I acknowledge it's a challenge because I've actually engaged with the sector around some of the challenges that they're experiencing. We need to be able to look at that in the context of our full health budget. We've said we're going to increase health each and every year in our government, as we will also education, and we'll look at that in government.
So when would you look to make that increase?
We'll look at that in government once we're in government.
In there you spoke about Nicola Willis as Finance Minister, you talked about Corrections Minister Mark Mitchell and Erica Stanford in Education. Are those non-negotiable portfolios in government?
What I've said to you is the non-negotiable is Nicola Willis is going to be our Finance Minister for sure.
And Corrections Minister Mark Mitchell?
I think he's going to make an outstanding Minister of Police and Corrections. But again, as I've said before, we need to get elected first and foremost. We're focusing on October the 14th, and then we'll deal with cabinet positions after that.
Will family and sexual violence prevention services be within your scope of cuts? The CTU says they will be.
No, absolutely not. We want to preserve all frontline services for victims of family and sexual violence.
Labor says you copied its homework on health targets. What do you make of that?
Well, no disrespect, but every single health target in New Zealand has gone backwards under this Labor government. So I don't take lectures from Labor or Chris Hipkins on health at all. It's in crisis and it's been chaos. The whole how on earth do you spend billions of dollars more, hire more public servants and deliver worse health outcomes on every dimension? It is a special and unique skill set that Chris Hipkins has, to spend more, to hire more and deliver worse outcomes on everything.
Weren't some of your promises, though, just repackaged already targets of what's happening now?
No, we've come back and said very clearly there are 5 key targets that we want to focus on. You've also seen us actually say we want to really prioritise immunisations and have a one-off incentive for GP clinics to actually lift our immunisation rates. Everything has gone backwards. This government has removed targets, and as a result, people show up today at work not knowing what they're there to do. I want everybody going into ministry and government departments to know exactly what they're there to do today. And that job is to improve outcomes for New Zealanders. That's what I'm interested in. I am focused and obsessed on outcomes because that's how we get to improve Kiwis' daily lives. That's how we improve it.
Given that, just to follow up on that, just given that, so two of those targets don't even have percentage numbers on it. How can you be relentlessly focused on outcomes when two of those don't even have a
Well, with respect to specialists and surgeries, what we've said is the data from the government is not being released until 2 weeks after the election. And so we want to be able to see that latest set of data. We know that those numbers have got out of control under this last 6 years. We want to see the latest set of data, which is actually, some of it's from March, some of it's from May today, but actually it's going to be released 2 weeks after the election. In fairness, we should have a look at that and then set the target of the base. Okay, last question. Thank you.
On the winter energy payment, you've committed to continuing it for seniors, but are you committing to continuing it for everyone who currently receives it?
Yes, we are continuing the winter energy payment for everyone who currently receives it. We've emphasised seniors today because we're in the company of seniors. I want to give Mark an opportunity for a question because he wants to ask about Ohariu, which is the most important electorate in New Zealand.
How is
Go for it,
the
Mark.
campaign going here, given that National hasn't won the seat in a long, long time? And what are the issues that people are telling you are their biggest concerns?
Look, the campaign is going incredibly well here. I am so glad I made the choice to run here. We've attracted a huge group of volunteers. We've knocked on more than 9,000 doors as a team. When we're knocking on those doors, the messages that are coming from the people of Ohariu they are really focused on the cost of living. Many of them are suffering with much higher mortgage payments. They want to see a government that manages the economy carefully. There's real concern about the lack of progress on transport issues in Wellington. As far as the people of Ohariu are concerned, Let's Get Wellington Moving has done the opposite. So I'm encouraged by the support I'm getting on the doors, by the amount of volunteers who are coming on board, and my message is, if you want strong representation for Wellington and a national-led government, then party vote National and vote for Nicola Willis to be your MP.
All right, guys.
In there described Greg O'Connor as the village idiot. What do you make of that assessment?
Well, I've been very careful throughout my campaign to speak well of my opponent. I think that we can disagree agreeably and be civil towards each other, so there won't be any name calling from me.
I asked Greg last week the same question I asked you about what he was hearing about big issues, and the first thing he said was the state of the Johnsonville Mall. Do you think that is a big issue, or it's a bit out of touch for him to be talking about that in cost of living crisis?
Oh, there's no doubt. Look, it's a cause of frustration. People have watched for decades as that mall has gone unimproved. You know, in the 90s they were talking about putting in an extra movie theatre. It never happened. But Greg should be careful because in 2017 he campaigned on fixing Johnsonville Mall, and the people whose doors I've knocked on remember that commitment and have seen nothing happen.
Speaking of big issues and fixing things, dental care and the cost of seeing a dentist is a big issue for a lot of New Zealanders. How will National help Kiwis who are struggling with dental care costs?
Well, look, I mean, we all want to be able to extend dental care to New Zealanders. That would be ideal. But the reality, as you saw from Jacinda Ardern, you've also seen from Chris Hipkins' previous remarks, that it's actually incredibly expensive and not something that we can afford at this point in time. And so, you know, for us, we've got to make sure we're working really hard on education and making sure we put big efforts into there. I'm very sceptical about what the government's proposed. Remember, this is a government that promised 20 mobile clinics in 2020 and didn't deliver any of them. I don't think even one of them is actually up and running at this moment. So their ability to be able to execute and deliver and actually get things done, I'm very sceptical about. But we are in challenged economic times. It would be an awesome thing to do. But the reality is there are other health priorities we've got to focus on for now.
Would it not save money though if you gave people access to free dental care now, you know, down the road?
What we have to focus on right now is actually the 4,500 nurses that we're short, the 1,700 doctors that we're short, and in healthcare there are a huge amount of pressing needs. You know, the 13 cancer drugs that we don't have in New Zealand that they have in Australia, while we have a 15% higher mortality rate to cancer than Australians in New Zealand. So there are other priorities that we have to focus on. Don't get me wrong, I think every political party would like to extend dental benefits to New Zealanders. But again, I just find it a little bit odd that, you know, Jacinda Ardern recently, Chris Hipkins previously have said that the economic conditions weren't right. Well, the economic conditions have only got worse, and they promised 20 mobile clinics and they didn't deliver. So I'm very sceptical about their ability to deliver it anyway. Okay, thank you guys. We're going to stop there. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Help.